Today, we are diving deep into a story that's been haunting the headlines for years. It's a story about a private island paradise that was actually a meticulously crafted nightmare. We're talking, of course, about the dark world of Jeffrey Epstein, a case that really pulls back the curtain on a system of power, secrecy, and abuse that goes all the way to the highest levels of our society.
So, our story really kicks off back in 1998. That's when a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands called Little St. James was purchased. And on the surface, it was the picture of perfection. You've got 75 acres of lush greenery, these pristine turquoise waters, luxury villas, and this strange temple-like building with a golden dome. For the powerful people flying in on their private jets, this was the ultimate status symbol, a secluded playground far, far away from any prying eyes.
Almost $8 million. Now that's a figure that, even for the super rich, is a serious investment. But this purchase, it bought so much more than just land and incredible views. It bought isolation. It bought absolute total privacy. And, maybe most importantly, it bought the power to create a whole world unto itself. A kingdom operating under its own set of rules, completely detached from the laws and morals of the outside world.
And this comparison, wow. It just perfectly captures the dark duality of the place. Because while the global elite knew it as Little St. James, this luxurious retreat, the locals, the people working the boats, cleaning the villas, the ones who saw who was coming and going, they had a different, absolutely horrifying name for it. Their whispered nicknames spoke to the truth that was hiding right behind those perfectly manicured palm trees.
Because this island, it was a machine of human suffering, a meticulously designed trap. Girls, some as young as 12 years old, were recruited and flown in from all over the world. Many came from impoverished backgrounds, lured by these false promises of money or modeling careers. But once they got there, their passports were taken. They were prisoners in a gilded cage, surrounded by an ocean that made any thought of escape, it was a terrifying impossibility. So today, we're going to break down how all of this was even possible. First, we'll explore the island and its very powerful guests. Then, we'll look at the architect of this abuse himself. After that, how the justice system was just shockingly rigged to protect him. Then, the investigation that finally brought him down. And finally, the secrets that are still lingering in the silence after his death.
Okay, so to really understand the power at play here, you have to look at who was visiting this island. This wasn't just some private getaway. It was a nexus point for the global elite, a place where immense power and influence all came together.
Just think about that for a second. The sheer concentration of influence this represents. Flight logs, court documents, victim testimonies, they all paint this picture of a constant flow of the world's most powerful people. So, what was the draw? It was more than just a vacation. Epstein offered a unique kind of currency, access. Access to other powerful people, access to financial deals, and a guarantee of absolute discretion. He was a master networker, and that island was his clubhouse. So who was this guy at the center of such a powerful web? How did a man like this get the kind of influence to summon princes and presidents to his private island? Well, when you start looking into Jeffrey Epstein's past, the math behind his rise to power, it just doesn't add up. And that right there is the central enigma of Jeffrey Epstein, a former math teacher who somehow becomes a billionaire financier, claiming he only manages money for the ultra-wealthy, yet there are almost no visible clients. He built a fortune of over $600 million, owned multiple mansions, a private jet, and this island, all while operating completely in the shadows. His source of wealth is still one of the case's biggest mysteries, and it's fueled all sorts of speculation about everything from intelligence operations to blackmail. For years, the horrors on Little St. James were an open secret, but they were silenced by a combination of money, intimidation, and a legal system that, frankly, seemed designed to protect powerful men like Epstein. But then, in 2005, a single, incredibly brave voice finally broke through that silence.
And this reveals the chillingly effective mechanics of his whole operation. The first crack in his armor didn't come from some high-level federal task force. No. It came from a frightened 14-year-old girl who walked into a police station in Palm Beach. She described this horrifying pyramid scheme of abuse, a self-sustaining system of exploitation where girls were actually paid to recruit other girls, creating this constant, devastating supply chain.
So, by 2006, the FBI had a rock-solid case. They called it Operation Leap Year, and it produced a 53-page federal indictment. He should have been facing life in prison. But then, the unthinkable happened. The U.S. attorney at the time, Alexander Acosta, struck a secret sweetheart deal. And this wasn't just a lenient plea bargain. It was a non-prosecution agreement that gave Epstein and any of his potential co-conspirators, 4 of whom were named and countless others who weren't, total federal immunity. That meant they could never be charged by the federal government for any of these crimes. The victims were never even told. He ended up serving just 13 months with generous work release. The system wasn't just broken, it was actively rigged.
So the villain walked free. It was a testament to this idea that some people are just too powerful to ever go to jail. And the story, it really should have ended right there. But one journalist refused to let that injustice stand. A full decade after that deal, Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald started digging. She fought to get court records unsealed, and she tracked down the forgotten victims, so many of whom were still living with the trauma. Then in 2018, her explosive series, Perversion of Justice, just laid it all bare. The secret deal, the cover-up, the lives that had been destroyed, and the world finally woke up. The outrage was absolutely deafening.
And this chart right here, this shows the direct result of that incredible reporting. The public outcry was so immense that in July of 2019, federal prosecutors in New York, who weren't bound by that Florida immunity deal, had no choice but to arrest Epstein again. And just look at the difference. The first deal was for 13 months in a county jail. This time, he was facing new federal sex trafficking charges that carried a potential 45-year sentence. There would be no deal. He was going down, and it looked like he was finally going to take some very powerful people down with him.
The world was waiting for the names to drop, for the powerful to finally be held accountable. But then, just as it seemed the truth would finally come out, the story took a really shocking and controversial turn. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell. Now, the official cause of death was suicide, but the circumstances were, well, to put it mildly, they were suspicious. He was supposed to be on suicide watch, but he wasn't. His cellmate was transferred out the night before. And, most famously, 2 cameras that were pointed directly at his cell mysteriously malfunctioned. The secrets, it seemed, had died with him. But did the secrets really die with him? His death created this vacuum of information, and it quickly became a political football. So you fast forward to the 2024 election cycle, and Donald Trump makes this massive promise on the campaign trail. Elect me, and I will release the Epstein files, exposing everyone involved. It was a really powerful promise of transparency and justice.
And he wins the election. But by July of 2025, the story completely changes. His own Justice Department announces that no list exists. Trump himself does a complete U-turn, dismissing the very files he once championed as boring and a Democrat hoax. This reversal, it wasn't just a broken promise. It was an example of how the very system of power that Epstein cultivated was now being used to protect the secrets he left behind.
And when you dig into the archives, it paints a complicated picture of a close, long-standing relationship. For years, especially in the 90s, Trump and Epstein were reportedly inseparable. An ex-employee said they spoke on the phone multiple times a week. We know from flight logs that Trump flew on Epstein's private jet at least 7 times. And a model named Stacey Williams claimed Trump not only introduced her to Epstein, but watched as Epstein touched her. Suddenly, the reluctance to release the file started to look less like policy and more like self-preservation.
Now, under immense public pressure, Congress did eventually force the release of some documents, but they were heavily redacted. I mean, black ink obscuring names and crucial details everywhere. And yet, even what slipped through was pretty damning. You had emails where Epstein claimed Trump knew about the girls. A resurfaced FBI report from a limo driver who remembered hearing Trump joke about a Jeffries girl way back in the 90s. And a letter written by Epstein from jail where he bitterly complained that he and the president shared the same hobbies.
And this slide, this really gets to the heart of where we are today. Despite everything we've seen, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's estimated that over 1 million pages of documents related to the Epstein investigation are still being withheld from the public. 3/4 of the story is still hidden behind redactions and bureaucratic walls, protecting those who have not yet been named. This is the chilling reality we are left with. Jeffrey Epstein, the man, is gone. But the network of power, money, and influence that enabled his crimes, that protected him for decades, and that continues to hide the full truth, that machine is still very much alive and well. It operates in the shadows of our financial, political, and legal systems. And ultimately, that leaves us with the most important and unsettling question of all. The focus can't just be on a list of names from the past. The real question is how the individuals and the systems that allowed all this to happen continue to operate at the highest levels of our society. The question isn't just who went to the island. The question is, why are they still in power? And that's a question that demands an answer, not just for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, but for all of us.